Well, thank you all for coming today. My job here is brief. I will not take 15 minutes to do it, and that is to welcome you to William & Mary and explain a little bit about the Whole of Government Center of Excellence and why we think this kind of initiative is exactly in line with what we want to accomplish. For me personally, this is a great passion. I happen to be a Russia specialist, and I was really excited to hear so much about the Arctic presence of Russia. For those who don't know this, and it wasn't mentioned, Russia has planted its flag literally at the North Pole. They did that in a very well-publicized voyage, and so it's quite true, as was said earlier, I think by Ms. Goodman, that they consider this part of Russian culture, Russian sovereignty. It definitely introduces yet another element into the mix. So why do we think that whole-of-government approaches are the way to tackle problems like this, and what can William & Mary in particular do about it? Here's the thing. Whole-of-government approaches to national security are three things that we almost never find anymore in 2018 in the U.S. First of all, they are bipartisan. Kind of can't believe that could be true. But we find statements from members of both parties at high levels. Secretary Mattis has been very much on record as saying whole-of-government approaches are critical to national security, of course, famously declaring that when you spend a little more on diplomacy, you can spend a bit less on guns. We have people like Secretary Gates. Robert Gates is, if you don't know this, a graduate of the College of William & Mary, class of '65, a Russia specialist, I might add. And he is now our honorary chancellor, which is a position that we have because we're a great British university back in the day. And Chancellor Gates has been very vocal in his support for our whole-of-government effort here at William & Mary, and of course when he was Secretary of Defense as well. We have people like Michelle Flournoy, who worked in the Obama administration and Department of Defense, who've been very active in bringing whole-of-government approaches to a variety of national security problems. And so you really don't have, in this particular area, somebody who's decided they have a partisan axe to grind to say, no, every agency should be separate from every other agency and should never talk to anyone at the state or local level. I mean, fortunately, we haven't, I shouldn't say that because you're sort of inviting someone to kind of take that up. But I guess what I'm saying is there's a fair amount of common sense here that brings us together to tackle important problems, and that's very exciting. It's also, as I just alluded to, a practical approach, something we really pride ourselves at William & Mary. We may be a very old institution, over 325 years old now. But we are still focused on present challenges, and we are not an ivory tower institution. So in our public policy program at our law school, in the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, business, education, every other aspect of arts and sciences here, we are training students to tackle real-world problems. We're the #1 public university in the country in terms of participation in study abroad by our undergraduates before they graduate, so this is global practice as well as local. We are very proud of our relationships with local military partners. We've been supported in this initiative by the Hampton Roads Federal and Military Facilities Alliance, and we've also been supported a lot by the Commonwealth, and we're really, really grateful for our partners. And by the way, speaking of the theme that Scott Genovese was just talking about, the speed of trust has really been forged here, and we do feel that we can rely on each other as we go forward to tackle these kinds of very serious problems. So the practical hands-on nature of whole-of-government approaches is another aspect that really fits our profile. And I'll say something a little more grandiose. A third reason why we like whole-of-government approaches is that they're democratic. They really do involve getting different stakeholders at the table. Obviously, first and foremost, the interagency, the state, the local level. So we're talking government first and foremost. That's why it's whole-of-government after all. But there have been analysts who've talked about something they call the whole-of-society approach. Well, maybe that goes too far. Not everybody can be at a table, no matter how capacious. But as was just mentioned on the last panel, pretty quickly, as you start talking about the interagency and you start talking about the different levels of government, you're going to find that private business, that NGOs, that citizens, by the way, students and faculty, are also stakeholders in these issues. And frankly, having an environment in which whole-of-government approaches can be organized gives space for those democratic elements of our society to actually more effectively make their points of view and their expertise known, and that too will help us solve national security challenges much more effectively than if we only discover at the last minute that there's somebody in the community who really knew quite a lot about this problem who never really knew there was an interagency process discussing the same thing. So at William & Mary, this fits us very well. Why here? Well, in addition to being very ancient and renowned, We have a long history of producing the kind of leaders who are tackling those hands-on problems. You'll recall a certain General George Washington, for example, who got his surveyor's license here at William & Mary. We've now claimed him as an alumni, so it's 4 U.S. presidents, not only 3 who came to William & Mary. He was our first U.S. chancellor after independence and was very involved in the college, so clearly a leader we embrace. Fairly famous diplomats like Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe also went here. And then we continue that tradition. Unfortunately, I only have 7 minutes, so I can't list all of the secretaries of state signers of the Declaration, but up to people like Secretary Gates today. And when we were building this project, we were going up to D.C. To Richmond talking about our project, we discovered William & Mary alums in every corner of the U.S. government. I mean, really quite remarkably, at leadership positions, in state, in DOD, in the agency, in commerce, you name it. People there who care about this institution and also care about the subject matter that we're discussing today. So suffice it to say that we think we're the right place to build a whole of government center of excellence. We want you all to be continuing partners. This kind of event is exactly what we're about. Our partners, as you know, in the co-organizing element here have brought the expertise to the table that's exactly representative of the kind of whole of government solutions to problems, beginning just with the discussion and with networking, which I agree completely builds at the speed of trust, to allow us to think a little bit more concretely about exactly how, for example, to bring Russia back to the table without somehow condoning annexation of Crimea and invasion of Ukraine. It's a very tricky problem. It involves diplomacy, it involves cultural understanding, it involves defense, and our partners in NATO. Every single aspect of this has to be thought through. This kind of brain power in this room is the way to do it.